The evening sky over Chicago was painted in shades of gold and gray, the kind of quiet twilight that felt peaceful on the surface, yet heavy beneath. Inside a cozy suburban home, the scent of freshly baked lasagna filled the air. Candles flickered gently on the dining table and soft jazz hummed through the speakers. Sarah adjusted the plates carefully, humming along, her heart full of warmth. To the world, she was the luckiest woman. A loving husband, a beautiful home, a life others could only dream of. Armand, her husband, was the kind of man neighbors admired. Ambitious, well-dressed, the man with a smile that could melt a crowd. But lately that smile had started to fade when he looked at her. His hugs grew colder, his eyes distant. And though his phone was always locked, his lies were slowly becoming visible between the cracks of silence. Sarah had always believed that love was built on trust. But lately, trust had started to feel like a rope she was clinging to while he quietly loosened it. It began with little things. Late-night calls he never explained, meetings that stretched longer than usual, jackets that smelled faintly of perfume she didn't wear. He'd come home after midnight, loosen his tie, kiss her forehead without looking into her eyes, and mutter, "Work was rough, let's not talk about it." At first, Sarah believed him. After all, Chicago's business world was harsh, deadlines unforgiving, and Armand had always been the kind of man who carried his stress silently. But the human heart is not blind. It sees before the mind accepts. One evening, while arranging the laundry, Sarah noticed lipstick, a soft coral shade, on the collar of his shirt. She froze, staring at it as if it were fire burning through her fingers. Her chest tightened, but instead of anger, a heavy silence filled her. She waited for him to explain, to offer something that could save her trust. But Armand brushed it off with a laugh, saying, "Maybe from a client's handshake, maybe from hugging a colleague, don't overthink." He spoke smoothly, but his eyes flickered with guilt. And that flicker was enough. Sarah's world began to tilt that night. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the city outside, wondering if marriages broke not in storms, but in whispers, in small lies that grew into walls between hearts. Days turned into weeks, and Armand's distance grew. His phone never left his hand, his screen always faced down, and his smile returned only when he texted someone late at night. Then came the night that shattered everything. Sarah was setting dinner again, waiting as always, when his phone, left on the counter by mistake, buzzed. Her heart raced. She told herself not to look. Love should be built on trust, but her trembling fingers picked it up. The screen lit with a message. "Miss you already. Can't wait to see you again. Maya." The world stopped. Her knees weakened, her breath caught, and tears blurred her vision. She read it again and again, each word stabbing deeper. Maya. Someone who wasn't her. Someone who held his heart now. Her lasagna grew cold. The candles burned low, but inside her chest a fire she couldn't put out had begun. When Armand returned home, Sarah's face was pale, her hands clenched. She showed him the phone, her voice breaking. "Who is she, Armand?" He looked at her with a smile too calm, too cruel. "Sarah, you're imagining things. You need to trust me." He spoke like a lawyer defending himself, not like a husband holding the heart he once swore to protect. That night, she cried silently on her pillow, realizing that betrayal doesn't always shout. Sometimes it denies, gaslights, twists reality, until you question your own sanity. The next weeks became a performance, Sarah cooking, smiling, laughing for neighbors, while her soul screamed inside. She noticed how he left business trips more often, how his shirt smelled less of home and more of someone else's perfume. Every evening she set the table, and every evening she ate alone. Her heart broke not because he had fallen for another, but because he chose lies over honesty, silence over truth. Yet, in her pain, Sarah began to watch closely, quietly. She kept track of dates, receipts, his patterns. She wrote in a small notebook she hid in her drawer, every late return, every unusual perfume, every missed call. Her silence was not weakness, it was survival. "Sometimes silence is the loudest scream," she wrote one night, tears staining the page. And then came the night of her birthday, the night that would mark the turning point. Friends and family gathered in their backyard, fairy lights twinkling, laughter echoing, glasses clinking. Sarah wore a pale blue dress, her smile forced but beautiful, her heart heavy but hidden. Armand gave a speech holding her hand in front of everyone, calling her the best thing that ever happened to me. The guests clapped, they cheered, but Sarah's eyes caught something else. The way he glanced at his phone, the way a message flashed briefly, the way his lips curved, not for her but for whoever waited beyond the screen. Later, when the guest had left and the house was silent, Sarah confronted him again, her voice steady this time. "How long will you keep lying to me?" He sighed, pouring himself a drink, his back to her. "Sarah, stop playing detective. You're making problems out of nothing." But then in that silence, his phone buzzed again on the counter, lighting up with the same name. Maya. Sarah's hand shook as she picked it up, reading words that ended every illusion. "I can't wait until you're free, Armand. She doesn't deserve you." The glass slipped from her hand, shattering against the floor. She looked at him, her tears streaming, and whispered, "I built my world around you, and you built lies around me." Armand's jaw tightened, his silence louder than confession. And in that moment, Sarah realized the truth. She wasn't losing him. She had already lost him. She turned away, her heart bleeding, but her silence growing stronger. In the quiet suburbs of Chicago, beneath the golden gray sky, a marriage that once seemed unshakable began to crumble, not with shouts but with silence, with secrets, with a phone that spoke louder than love. And as Sarah closed her diary that night, she wrote the line that would carry her story forward. "He thought my silence was weakness, but one day it will speak louder than his lies." The days after Sarah's birthday felt like walking through fog. The air inside the house was heavy, the kind that pressed against your chest and made breathing feel like effort. The laughter that once filled their home was gone, replaced by the quiet hum of distance. Armand still came home every night, but in truth, he hadn't been home in a long time. Sarah moved through the rooms like a ghost of the woman she used to be. She no longer asked where he'd been or who he was texting. Her silence now had weight, like a mirror forcing him to see what he'd become. She cooked his favorite meals, left them untouched on the table, and went to bed early. Each night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when love had turned into punishment. But what she didn't know was that Armand's heart was already someplace else, wrapped around a woman named Maya. Maya was everything Sarah wasn't. At least that's what Armand told himself. She was bold, free-spirited, the kind of woman who wore danger like perfume. They had met 6 months ago at a corporate event downtown. She worked in marketing for a luxury firm, sharp-tongued and magnetic. One glance, one drink, one conversation, and Armand felt something ignite that he hadn't felt in years. At first he told himself it was harmless, a harmless flirtation to fill the void. But soon coffee turned to dinners and dinners to hotel rooms lit by city lights. Maya's laughter was intoxicating, her words even more so. She would look at him with those piercing hazel eyes and whisper, "You don't belong in that boring house, Armand. You were made for more, for someone who actually understands you." Her voice was like silk over poison. Every night she made him feel alive, but every morning he woke up with guilt gnawing at his chest. Still, addiction doesn't care for morality. He began lying effortlessly. Longer meetings, sudden work trips, late-night emergencies. Each lie pulled him deeper into Maya's world and further from Sarah's. Soon the affair wasn't just physical, it became psychological. Maya wanted more. She wanted all of him. And she wasn't afraid to ask for it. One night, as rain streaked the windows of her downtown apartment, Maya lay beside him, tracing circles on his chest. "Armand," she whispered, "how long are you going to keep living two lives?" He said nothing. "You'll never be free until she's gone." The words slid into his ears like a curse. He laughed weakly. "Gone? You mean divorced?" Maya smirked, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Do you think she'll ever let you go? She's the kind that clings, You'll always be trapped unless... Her silence finished the sentence. He stared at her, stunned, and yet part of him didn't look away. That was the moment the seed was planted. Armand's descent guilt began to warp into frustration. Every time he looked at Sarah, he saw a reflection of the man he used to be. Honest, grounded, decent. It disgusted him now. He didn't want reminders. He wanted escape. Sarah, meanwhile, had become quieter than ever. She no longer argued, no longer questioned. She just observed. Her diary grew thicker with dates and details. She wasn't planning revenge, right? She was documenting a slow death. The death of her marriage. Then came the night everything changed. Armand sat alone in his car, parked outside their house, staring at the glow of their living room window. Inside, Sarah was setting the table again, just like she always did. His chest tightened, not from guilt, but from exhaustion. He dialed Maya. She picked up on the first ring. "I can't do this anymore," he said. Her tone was calm, too calm. "Then don't. It's not that simple." "It is, Armand. You're just afraid to make a decision." He closed his eyes, his hand trembling around the steering wheel. "Maya." She cut him off, voice low and cold. "If you loved me, truly loved me, she wouldn't still be breathing in your house." The line went dead, but her words echoed like thunder in his head. That night, Armand didn't sleep. He sat in the dark, watching rain slide down the windows until dawn broke across the city skyline. By morning, his decision was made. The drive, the next evening, Armand walked into the kitchen as Sarah prepared coffee. "Let's go for a drive tonight," he said casually. She looked up, surprised. "It's late," she replied softly. "It's been a long day." "Exactly. I want to clear things up between us." It was the first time in months he'd asked her to spend time together. A flicker of hope lit in her eyes. Maybe he wanted to fix things, maybe the man she loved still existed somewhere under all those lies. She nodded. That night the rain returned, soft at first, then relentless, washing the city streets clean of color. They drove in silence, the wipers swaying rhythmically, the road shimmering under the streetlights. Sarah looked out the window, her reflection faint in the glass. "You've been so distant, Armand," she said gently. "If I've done something wrong, tell me. I'll fix it." He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his jaw clenched. She turned to face him. "Please, just talk to me." But Armand said nothing. The plan was simple in his head. Take the back road through the forest, where no cameras, no witnesses, no interruptions. A staged crash, quick, clean, done. As they left the city lights behind, the road grew darker, narrower. Thunder rolled in the distance. Sarah felt uneasy. "Where are we going?" she asked. He forced a smile. "Just somewhere quiet." Minutes later, the car slowed to a stop near a deserted curve lined with tall trees. The rain drummed against the roof like a heartbeat. Sarah frowned. "Armand, what's wrong?" He turned off the engine. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she whispered, voice trembling, "Why, Armand? What did I do wrong?" Her question cut through the night like glass. He looked at her, and for a split second, guilt flickered in his eyes, but it vanished just as fast. He stepped out into the rain. Sarah followed, confused, shivering. The cold bit into her skin as she grabbed his arm. "Talk to me." But Armand's silence was his confession. A flash of lightning lit the road, their faces soaked, their hearts miles apart. She could see it now. The darkness in his eyes, the same darkness that had crept into her home, into her life. When he turned back toward the car, she realized something was terribly wrong. Her voice broke, desperate. "Armand, please. We can fix this." He didn't answer. He got behind the wheel, revved the engine, and for one last time, looked at her through the windshield. Then, the sound of tires screeching, metal twisting, flames erupting. The night swallowed everything. Aftermath. The next morning, police found a burnt vehicle on the side of the forest road. The fire had consumed everything. The driver's seat was empty. The passenger side, unrecognizable remains. Armand stood a few miles away at a gas station, drenched and shaking, his car keys buried in a nearby ditch. He had called the scene in himself, pretending to be the grieving husband who'd just escaped a tragedy. He cried on cue, perfectly, like a man who had lost his world. "Sir, are you sure it was your wife driving?" "Yes," he choked out. "She lost control. The road was wet." I tried to stop her. The officers nodded sympathetically. One of them patted his shoulder. "We'll do everything we can, but fate, as always, keeps receipts." Maya's shadow 2 days later. Armand stood before Sarah's framed photo in their living room. Friends, colleagues, even neighbors came to offer condolences. He played his part flawlessly, trembling hands, red eyes, hollow voice. Maya called that night. "It's over," she said. He exhaled, a shaky smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, it's over. Now we can be free," she whispered. But something in her tone sent a chill down his spine. Freedom didn't feel like peace. It felt like fear. Weeks passed. The police closed the case as an accident. Armand sold the house and moved into Maya's apartment. Everything he thought he wanted was finally his. But nights grew darker, sleep harder to find. Sometimes, he'd wake to the faint smell of lasagna. Other nights he'd hear soft footsteps in the hallway, the creak of floorboards, the whisper of a woman's voice. He told himself it was guilt. Just guilt. Until one night, it wasn't. Maya was asleep beside him when he heard it. A faint knock at the door. 3 knocks. Slow, hollow. He checked the clock. 2:47 a.m. When he opened the door, the hallway was empty. But lying on the doormat was a single sheet of paper. It was damp from the rain. On it, written in familiar handwriting, he thought my silence was weakness. But one day, it will speak louder than his lies. His heart stopped. His hands trembled. He looked out into the rain-soaked corridor, but there was no one there. Behind him, Maya stirred. "Armand, what is it?" He turned slowly, his face pale. "Nothing," he whispered. "Just nothing." But the silence that filled the room felt alive, whispering, breathing, watching. And in that silence, Armand realized something terrifying. He hadn't escaped Sarah. He had awakened her. Chicago's skyline glimmered under the pale moonlight, but for Armand, the city had lost its glow. Nights no longer brought peace, only whispers that crawled beneath his skin. He sat on the balcony of his new apartment with a glass of whiskey in hand, staring at the traffic below. Maya's laughter echoed faintly from inside, sharp, carefree, the sound of someone who had no ghosts chasing her. He envied that. It had been 3 months since Sarah's accident. The world had moved on. The condolences had faded. The sympathy messages stopped. Yet in the quiet of the night, Sarah's memory had started to breathe again. Through the rain, through the silence, through the reflection of his own eyes. He often caught glimpses of her. In mirrors, in dreams, sometimes in the steam of his morning shower. A figure standing behind him, faint and still, lips moving to words he couldn't hear. But one night, as he wiped the fogged mirror clean, he finally did. "You took my life, now I'll take your peace." He stumbled backward, heart hammering. When he looked again, the mirror was empty. Cracks in the paradise at first. Armand thought it was guilt, a natural symptom of sin. But soon reality began to crack too. Money from his accounts started disappearing. His company's investors began pulling out without warning. He'd call the bank, the lawyer, the accountant, all confused, all apologetic, all useless. Maya shrugged it off every time. "You're overthinking again," she'd say, twirling her hair in front of the mirror. But there was something off about her lately. The way she avoided his eyes, the way she guarded her phone like a secret. One night, he woke up to find her side of the bed empty. The clock read 2:14 a.m. He checked the balcony, the kitchen, nothing. Then he saw the light flashing under the study door. When he opened it slightly, he saw her sitting on the desk, whispering into her phone. Her tone was low but sharp, almost angry. "No, not yet. He's not ready. I'll tell you when it's done." Armand froze. He pushed the door a little further. The wood creaked. Maya turned. Her eyes, cold and sharp, met his. "And can't sleep?" she asked, her smile mechanical. "Who were you talking to?" She laughed softly. "Relax, Armand. You're starting to sound paranoid." But when she kissed him that night, he could taste distance. The haunting days grew heavier. Every sound in the apartment started to feel like Sarah's voice. The creak of the door, the hum of the fridge, the whisper of wind through the curtains. One evening, while working at his desk, the lights flickered. The air grew colder and the faint scent of vanilla, Sarah's favorite candle, filled the room. He looked around. Nothing. Then he heard it. A faint H, soft, broken, coming from the kitchen. His body went numb. Slowly, he followed the sound. The kitchen light swayed slightly, flickering, and there, carved faintly into the condensation on the window, were words that froze his soul. "I see you." He stumbled back, dropping the glass from his hand. It shattered across the tiles. Maya rushed in, annoyed. "What happened?" There were words on the window." She glanced at it. Clean, empty. "Armand, you need sleep." But that night, as he lay beside her, her face shifted in his dreams, and for a second, it wasn't Maya lying next to him. It was Sarah, burned, smiling. Karma's whisper. It began with a phone call. "Mr. Armand Sheikh?" "Yes?" "This is Detective Harris with the Chicago Police Department. We need to speak with you about your wife's accident." The words drained the blood from his face. "Accident? I already gave my statement months ago." "Yes, but new information has surfaced. Please come down to the station tomorrow morning." He hung up slowly. Maya was watching him from the hallway, expression unreadable. "What's wrong?" "Police want to talk about Sarah." She didn't flinch, didn't blink. "Then go," she said quietly. "You have nothing to hide, right?" But something in her tone twisted the air. That night, he couldn't sleep. Every sound felt amplified. The ticking clock, the dripping faucet, his own heartbeat. He got up to pour himself a drink, and stopped on the counter lay his old wedding ring. He hadn't seen it since the night of the crash. He stared at it, his breath shallow. It gleamed faintly in the moonlight, clean, polished, untouched by fire. And beneath it, written in faint handwriting on the marble counter, "Justice always finds its way home." The confrontation the next evening, unable to contain his spiraling thoughts, Armand confronted Maya. "Where were you last night?" She glanced up from her phone. "Here. Why?" "Don't lie to me, Maya," he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "You've been sneaking out, taking calls, and now the police are reopening Sarah's case. What the hell are you doing?" Maya looked at him with something between pity and disgust. "You really don't see it, do you?" she said softly. "See what? That karma doesn't need ghosts to destroy you. It just waits until you've destroyed yourself." Her calmness scared him more than any scream could have. He grabbed her wrist. "What are you hiding?" She smiled, cold, sharp, final. "You really thought I'd stay with a murderer?" His grip loosened. His body froze. She pulled her hand away, picked up her purse, and walked toward the door. "Maya," he called out, panic rising. "What are you talking about?" She turned once, her eyes glinting in the dim light. "Sarah deserved better, and so did you, before you chose hell." Then she was gone. The fall. When he checked the bank accounts that night, everything was empty. Every cent, his savings, his company's funds, even the house deed, transferred. Maya had taken it all. He called her number again and again, disconnected. Her social media vanished, her apartment empty. It was as if she had never existed. The next morning, police knocked on his door with a warrant. "Mr. Sheik, we have questions regarding inconsistencies in your wife's accident report." He barely heard them. His eyes were fixed on the corner of the living room, where a faint outline of Sarah's face seemed to shimmer against the wall. She was smiling. The investigation detective Harris sat across from him in the interrogation room, calm, methodical. "We've re-examined the case," he said. "There are signs the crash was staged. The fire didn't start from the engine. It started from inside the cabin." Armand's hands trembled. "That's impossible. Also." When they locked him in the holding cell, the sound of rain echoed faintly from the vents. He leaned his head against the cold bars, his reflection in the small mirror above the sink staring back. Hollow, lifeless. And for a moment, he swore the reflection blinked before he did. Days turned into weeks inside. At night, he heard whispers in the darkness. Sometimes it was Sarah's voice, sometimes his own, echoing back the words he once used to deceive her. "It's just work, Sarah, don't overthink." Now every lie replayed itself in his mind like a punishment. One evening, during cell inspection, an officer handed him a small brown envelope. "No sender," he said. "Came from your old address. Came from..." Armand's fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside was a folded letter, the paper slightly yellowed, the handwriting delicate and familiar. Sarah's handwriting. "Armand, if you're reading this, it means the truth has finally found its way back to you." Years later, the house that once belonged to Armand and Sarah stood abandoned on the quiet street in suburban Chicago. Neighbors said that sometimes on rainy nights, they could see a faint light glowing through the upstairs window, the flicker of a candle and the sound of soft humming. Sarah's song. Not haunting, not sad, just peaceful, as if love, after all its storms, had finally found its home. You can escape the world, but not your conscience. You can hide from justice, but never from karma. And sometimes, the only way to find peace is to face the truth you tried to bury. Thanks for watching. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional stories. New dramas every day, where every story has a soul.